Invading the country music capital of the world is the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series to a track that has only been on the schedule for now the last 4 seasons of competition. This is going to be an exciting middle round to the campaign, and we're happy that all of you are joining us alongside here on RaceSpotTV on a Monday night for the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series. Off the heels of what was an exciting round from the New Hampshire Motor Speedway, now sees the intermediate short track hybrid that is the Nashville Super Speedway. And I'm your host Joshua Lee. Alongside with me for the ride tonight is Derek Watson. And Derek, welcome to what I called the country music capital of the world, but after IndyCar's brief stint here, after NASCAR coming back to the Nashville Super Speedway, this really is almost like a new motorsports capital in the middle of this country.
Well, in fact, it really is because, of course, IndyCar is going to finish their season here this year on the oval, not the street course. So it really is. It's a beautiful course here in Nashville dealing with. And you're right. It's just a beautiful, beautiful facility. But you look at the schedule we got coming up here, and right now we got a week off after tonight, then round 15 and 16, Pocono and Indianapolis. And then we're 2 weeks off for the Olympics before we go all the way straight through to find your RSR season-long champion. Speaking of which, let's take a look at those points, Josh, and see how we got. It's Agno Phillip with 7 wins, with Bradley Burke with 2. And then Lariah, Cody Harris, Manatzi Major, and Matt Danson all have a win. Then everyone else battling for points with that line back there for 16th right now. Grant Davis and Brett Larson, a single point. Braden Whitaker, 21 back. DeAndre Kane, 29 back. Cam Patterson, 31, and so on from there. But 1 point. We're about halfway through the season, Josh, and 1 point right now dictates who is in and out of the playoffs.
Cut line got real close after the New Hampshire Motor Speedway, but where we sit right now with that playoff standing is only 1 point separating that cut line, but all out in front, it's Agno Phillip with his 7 wins, and anybody trying to catch up to him. As we take a look now at qualifying, as out in front, we've got Maverick Davis in third. Maverick Davis gonna end off his 2 laps, and we jump over to Andrew Farinage, who has yet to put down a time. He's gonna go towards that now. But this Nashville Super Speedway, Derek, I mentioned earlier that it is almost like a short track intermediate hybrid. It's not exactly long enough to be called an intermediate. It is not 1.5 miles in length or more, but it races a lot like an intermediate with the high speed straightaways. But then you dive into these corners and you can see from that 88 to Andrew Farinage, they are slow corners. They are not heavily banked. You really got to be slow and methodical when it comes to these corners. That is what has made the Nashville Super Speedway, along with the racing surface that could have used a repave, but we're glad they didn't with the tire wear that we're going to see tonight in a big moment off turn 2 from the 88.
Yeah, this track reminds me of 3 tracks all in one, Josh. It reminds me a little bit of, a Gateway with those long straights. Reminds me a little bit of Dover, not quite as banked, but just something about that corner reminds you a little bit of Dover. And then you got, here's an old reference for you, the Nazareth Speedway. We haven't seen that in forever with that kind of dog leg there on the straightaway. So it really is a bunch of different tracks. I don't think it's built that way. It was not built with those in mind. But that's what it reminds you of when I race here. Now we see Agno Phillip in the 94 coming on around here. He'll get wide out of that dog leg and down into 1 and 2. There's Agno showing off the hardware behind him, Josh. The RSR championship title from last year. Whoa, got a little wiggle there. And that's going to be a scary moment if that happens all night long. But here he is down into 3 and 4. Let's see if he can get a pole here with about a minute left.
Looking for pole, but he was not that quick in practice. And you can see getting way up the groove out of turn number 4 for the 94 of Agno Phillip. He'll cross the line. 30.4. That's not quick at all. That's P13 for the 2-time reigning champion.
But look at that. Look at that look in his face. No pressure, no stress, not mad about it. There are some drivers who, if that was their first qualifying run, they'd be unhappy. They'd be stressed. You'd see it written all over their face. Here's Michael Lariah. Has had a beautiful set of runs here lately, Josh, in that 44, and has done really well wants to continue that pace tonight. Just coming down after his laps, and we'll bring it down pit road here with about 18 seconds left in qualifying. For the most part, if you haven't turned your lap yet, pardon me, you're not going to.
So everybody will now bring it back down into the pit lane, finish up qualifying here from the Nashville Super Speedway, and we get ready to go racing in the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series. I mentioned only 3 times we have gone racing here on the RSR calendar, and it was in 2021, 2022, and 2023 to align with the real world NASCAR schedule. And we ended up with Brandon Bowie, Sam Nieto, and Landon Mills grabbing all 3 of those victories. But on the pole tonight, Peter Irons. How about the RSR rookie laying it down on the pole position? He'll lead the field to the green flag with Sam Nieto for Flat Out Esports to his outside. Michael Araya and Brandon Gass going to share that second row. Cody Harris and Maverick Davis going to round out the first 3 rows on the starting grid, with Brett Larson, Cam Patterson, Jason Landry, and Ross Cato rounding out the top 10. How about an uncharacteristic qualifying effort from Andrew Farinage as well? He's going to be behind the 8 ball starting P11. Braden Whitaker will start P12. Thomas George Manazzi Major rounding out your 7 rows, with Agnel Phillip, the 2-time reigning champ, starting all the way back in P15. Eric Papanow, Mike Maddox, and DeAndre Kane will round out the opening 9 rows on the grid. And then everybody else back from here elected to not take a time in qualifying. Kyle Trudell, Grant Davis, Bradley Burke, Dalton Randolph, and Steve Soa going to round out the 23 drivers that we are going to see make an effort here tonight in the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series. Temperatures looking relatively cool to start out this evening, Derek, and as we go racing tonight for about 150 laps around the virtual Nashville Super Speedway. Tires, of course, are going to be something that we will talk about pretty much the entire night. 4 tire sets. They can make it about 70 to 80 laps on fuel, but really those tire sets are going to be the big thing that we're going to be talking about all night long.
Yeah, 4 additional tire sets plus the 1 on the car. So you'll do the math. We're doing, 150 laps tonight. So about 30 laps per run is what you want to average out as a driver. Typically, you want to go a little more than that, just in case we do have some RSR overtime. But you're right. This track is bumpy. This track is abrasive and bumpy and rough and everything you could think of as a word. So that's how they're going to play it out here. We're going to start to roll off the grid here, and we'll see who can survive here this race in Nashville and get ready to have a week off here. But look at this now. Some people are going to come up on the track. Some people use the access road. And that access road is something we're going to talk about later, Josh, because I think tracks with access roads for pit exits typically can lead to a few more mistakes off pit road than tracks without them. But here we go. They'll come down the back straight here for 1 to go, Josh. And, well, as you said, not too hot. But Cody Harris here is ready to go. And one of the many drivers tonight who's going to experience one of those summer nights here on track at Nashville.
Cody Harris lending us his webcam, as well as the 2-time reigning champion Agnel Phillip, as we get ready to go racing from the virtual Nashville Super Speedway. We're glad that all of you are joining us for a Monday night here on RaceSpotTV as the iRacing official pace car pulls down into the safety of the pit lane. The field will reach the Geico restart zone, and we say, let's go racing from Nashville.
Well, it didn't take long, Josh, for a lot of drivers to want to get down the single groove on the bottom of the track for now. You'll see our leaders kind of moving up and down the lanes here through the corners. That's Peter Irons, Sam Nieto, and Brandon Gass, 1, 2, and 3. But there's a battle side by side for third, and it's already hot and heated here on this track.
Lariah on the bottom. That's going to be the 15 of Maverick Davis now up top as Brandon Gass is going to clear for that third spot. Now Lariah clears for fourth. Move Maverick Davis back into P5, up one spot from where he started, P6. But Irons controlling this race now with Sam Nieto behind, who I mentioned him earlier being one of the 3 drivers to go to victory lane here at the Nashville Super Speedway in Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series action. That was the first race of the next gen era for the Nashville Super Speedway in 2022.
Yeah, and Sam himself told me, he really loves this track. One of his stronger tracks is a word he used earlier. He expects to run well, but he says he'll need a long run here if he wants to run well. So that's his hopes right now as we stay green flag racing and we keep this going on here as that number 2 car in the red, white, and blue wants to perform pretty well.
Nieto behind as we do have a couple of battles closer back in the field, but you got to go back all the way to Braden Whitaker and Ross Cato. Now that number 12 up on the outside line, not exactly where you want to be. Yes, you can run some multi-groove racing here, Derek, but especially early on before those tires wear, that inside line is going to be the place to be. And Cato, I think, is similar to Martinsville, just kind of trapped upstairs as now Andrew Farinar is going to take advantage. And now Cato goes back to P12. He's down 2 spots from starting P10.
Yeah, typically the bottom lane's always the fastest if you have a track where the car's not upset by the bottom lane like it was last week in New Hampshire. But there's someone stuck up top, and that looks slow. Is that Cam Patterson up top?
That was Patterson, who I believe just had a pretty big moment in turns 3 and 4. We'll see if we can grab the replay of that, but back to the battles on the racetrack. Cato using the outside line has gained a little bit more momentum as Agnel Phillip is on the charge, up 4 spots from P15 where he started. He sits P11, now trying to chase down his former championship rival and Andrew Farinar, who sits up the road.
Yeah, Agnel having a great run here. We saw runs like this last week as well at New Hampshire where drivers didn't qualify well who you would expect to be up front, and then they magically got up front. Here's what happens with Cam Patterson. Oh, a little assistance there from the 51. And man, look at that double wiggle there. That is impressive that he saved that, Josh. Got it all gathered together and saved himself a yellow and possibly a wrecked race car early in this race.
That was the 51 of Brett Larson, who he made contact with there in 3 and 4. Kept it straight. He did save it. We stay green as still side by side close to the back of the field. That's Bradley Burke to the inside of now Ross Cato. I'm not sure what this outside line working for Ross Cato is, Derek. It's not working out well for him right now as Bradley Burke is going to get by him on the inside. As the 12 just want to try different lines. Is he buying time up on that outside line? I'm not sure I fully get losing 3 spots when he has had opportunities to get to the inside.
Well, what he's doing possibly is playing the long game, Josh, right? So you're right. In the moment, he's going to lose a spot, maybe 2 or 3. But typically, for most tracks, the less wheel you can put into your car, you'll save tires. So if this thing goes green for 40, 50, 60 laps, you might find that 12 car has a little bit more tire left in it than some of his competitors who insisted on running the low line the whole time. But here's a battle back up front. Even using the apron there a little bit, being a little risky here as Brandon Gass trying to hold off Michael Lariah. Using that baking, Josh, that's a faster way around the track. The scary part about it, though, is that transition onto it and off of it, because you can quickly unsettle your car and find yourself turned around just because of how hard that transition is. That shake that happens in the car, the slamming of the body against the ground can really lead to some very tense moments if you try that too often.
This is the battle for third right now. That battle for the lead is not changed hands yet. Still Peter Irons in front. Still Sam Nieto unchanged from where those top 2 had started this race. We already put 10 laps behind us, Derek, and the best lap times coming at the beginning of the run, they were about 30 seconds flat to 30.050 from Peter Irons for his best lap so far. We're going on to lap number 12 now, and it's 30.272 from Irons, a 30.338 from Sam Nieto. So already starting to see a little bit of tire fall off. Not a whole lot just yet. I mentioned earlier that they can make it about 70 to 75 laps on fuel, and that's about the point where they want to go. Halfway bonus is at lap 75, and kind of want to cut this race in half if your tires can last that long.
Yeah, that'll be the question, right? How do the tires handle and what opportunities present to you here as we see him come around again here to start lap 13. Let me throw a number at you, by the way. You mentioned that 30.049 or 050 is your fastest lap. Last time by, Agno Phillip was a 30.089. So he is cruising through the field. But here on screen, we're going to watch Cody Harris there in that scarlet and gray 28 machine. Talked with Cody a little bit today. Said he was happy that the track is here. Not much practice time, but he says it's a good news for him. He thinks that he and Sam Nieto have squashed the feud they had last week. He thinks that maybe they've both kind of gotten out of their system. By the way, I talked to Sam Nieto. That's not exactly a mutual feeling. So we'll see if that comes up later.
Yeah, everybody saw what happened with Cody Harris and Sam Nieto, and we heard from it as well post-race, saw the discussions, and unfortunately, it looks like Sam Nieto, for the moment, is dropped out of the race session. Of course, iRacing, unlike real-life motorsports, almost completely connection-based to keep your car in the running. You're not going to see a whole lot of random mechanical failures, but you are going to see connection failures, and I think that's what we just saw from Sam Nieto, kind of the equivalent of blowing an engine. I mean, he has now scored one lap down, not on the racetrack, and we haven't seen him fully dip out of the race just yet, but I'm willing to bet money that we're going to see that pop up in the iRacing admin control here in a moment.
Yeah, so unfortunate for Sam. He'll have to see if he can bounce back from that. And if he chooses to bounce back here or what he wants to do about his points tonight, we'll wait and see. But, man, this battle up front, the 20 car, Brandon Gass, now up to second place, by the way, and has really done a great job of holding off Michael Laraya so far. Josh is doing a great job here, making that car wide, keeping Laraya behind him. And they are slowly creeping up on the leader here. And they are, I mean, when I say slowly, I mean within hundredths of a second is the moves they're making. But they're going to get there soon.
Down the back straightaway now between Gass and Laraya. And we mentioned a little bit earlier this evening the 94 of Agno Phillip and the tear that you mentioned, Derek, that he has been on in this race. And we look on board now with Agno Phillip in the number 94. Been, of course, the strongest competitor this season as he dips it below the yellow line in the tri-oval to grab that spot and put him from P9 up into P8. Just what a season it's been for Agno Phillip. Of course, now with 2 championships under his belt for the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series, and yes, he has gotten those championships, and they have been great seasons for him. I don't think he has started a season much better than 2024. 7 wins, and the next competitor down in the win column for the season is at 2 wins. It has been an unstoppable season for Agno Phillip in the 94 as he works to the inside now of Braden Whitaker for P7.
And by the way, if we stick here for a second, look at this wheel input from Agno Phillip. You want to know what kind of night a driver is having in any kind of race we do on iRacing? If you could watch their wheel inputs, if they had a webcam on, look how little wheel movements for the most part there is here. There's a little bit of wiggle, middle of that corner, but he gets it straightened back out and down the straightaway. It's perfectly calm, a little bit of just force feedback happening, but that is very minimal wheel inputs compared to what you can see from other drivers most likely. So you can tell he's having a good time here and is having a good time with the handling of this car.
I'd be interested to know what steering ratio he's using in his fixed setup as well. All the cars are running the same iRacing base fixed setup. They do get a little bit of adjustments to those. Steering pinion, steering ratio come to mind. Used to be able to affect a little bit more than that. With these next gens, they're a little bit more locked down, so you're not going to get much more than that, plus brake bias that these drivers can also mess with in the cars as well. But Braden Whitaker now running that Ross Cato line, actually a lane up from where the number 12 of Ross Cato was running, and he's falling like a rock a little bit. Bradley Burke's going to get by for P8, and now Farinarj is going to move his way back down to the inside.
Yeah, nice little battle here back towards the middle of the field. Little two wide racing here. You'll see drivers taking different lines here, and sometimes it's just preferences. What's the fastest line for you is not always the fastest line for me. Where you're comfortable, what you've learned, or how, as you said, how your steering ratio is set, or force feedback, or whatever can help dictate the line you pick here. But doing a pretty solid job to keep it up in the pack here. Now they're back single file and doing a fairly decent job at it. But Josh, as I said earlier, and you said earlier, this track is bumpy. When I think about tracks on the NASCAR schedule that we run on the official schedule at RSR, or even in NIS and the official side of iRacing, as far as this force feedback, feeling the bumps, this track is definitely like a top 5 for me. Like, the whole time you're running this track, if you have your force feedback on, you can feel the bumps here. There's no mistaking how bumpy this track is as a driver.
It's bumpy, arguably, for people who have incorrect opinions, overdue for a repave. I think if you make the argument that Nashville Superspeedway deserves a repave, I think it's a bit of a moot argument, because this is one of the last remaining kind of old school concrete pavement tracks, and really plays in to just how unique this track is. And honestly, a little bit criminal that it sat off the Cup Series calendar for all those years that Trucks and Xfinity were here, and was kind of criminal that it got taken off the Xfinity Series and Truck calendar as well when it did.
Yeah, it's a track that's always produced a lot of great racing and a lot of great highlights. I believe if I remember this track right, there's a really infamous prayer that happened at this track many years ago for the Xfinity Series. A little boogity, boogity, boogity amen, I believe, happened at this track.
This was the famous boogity, boogity, boogity amen track, and we haven't gotten quite an invocation like that since, have we? I don't think anything is going to hold a candle to that.
Maybe someone had a talk about that, right?
The worst part of it was he did it in an Xfinity race. I mean, that deserved, I think,
that's like no one saw it, basically, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that deserved a Cup Series platform, but unfortunately didn't quite get that.
No, not really. Unfortunately, not here. The sun is coming out, by the way, Josh. If this heats up this track, we're going to see these cars behave a little bit more erratically than they have been, because these are going to get a little looser. Those corners are getting a little sketchier. And that banking, if you choose to use it on the bottom, will be even sketchier if the sun continues to come out here. We saw the track brighten up a little bit here, but what's brightening up right now is Michael Laraya's day, because he is all over the back bumper of Brandon Gass, and they're now within a quarter of a second of Peter Irons. So the future is looking really great for these guys as far as catching the leader.
They caught each other, and they did indeed catch that number 1 of Peter Irons, who has led every single lap since the drop of the green flag tonight. But I think Brandon Gass and Michael Laraya are going to try and make that stat different, as Gass looks into turn 3. Just doesn't quite have the speed that Peter Irons has had throughout this entire run. Last time by, they were a touch faster by about 2/100ths of a second across the line. This time by about the same thing, 7/1000ths of a second that time by, however. Faster to Brandon Gass, and only about 1/1000th of a second faster was Michael Laraya than the both of those drivers in front of him. So this battle continues. Agnell Phillip, of course, is still on his tear to the inside, and just like nothing happened in the first 29 laps of this race, Agnell Phillip is not only within the top 5, but he is now 1.3 seconds back from that group that we were just focused on in the top 3.
And good news for him, he now has open air ahead of him, right? So now he gets to dictate his line, he gets to dictate his braking point, he gets to dictate anything he wants to. Because for at least the next probably second or second and a half or so, there's no one ahead of him to say, hey, you got to brake here, or you have to turn in here, or whatever. He has to worry about Maverick Davis behind him. But let me tell you, as a driver, when you can get some clean air and not have to worry about someone else's braking points, boy, it'll feel like life is a highway right in front of you.
Are the country music references starting? Does that count as country music?
Rascal Flatts did it, so I think so. Rascal Flatts did it for cars.
All right, I can see that. I'll give that one to you. I was just looking up, trying to look up Agnell Phillips' stats, the last 3 races here at the Nashville Super Speedway for the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series, because I don't exactly remember them being too spectacular. I mean, of course, Agnell Phillip, anytime he is on the racetrack in RSR competition, he's going to be fast. That's absolutely no question. But I really want to know just exactly how he has gone at the Nashville Super Speedway. I'm only looking right now in the 2024 season. It'd be better if I looked in the past seasons, but I don't remember much fanfare in the Nashville Super Speedway for Agnell Phillip. 3 races, of course, we have had here over 3 seasons, and at least in 2022 and 2023, the 2 that I can find that he started, those finishes for him look to be 6th and 3rd. So when you talk about any other driver, I would say that those are pretty decent stats. 2 top 10 finishes, one of them being a top 5, one of them being on the podium. But for Agnell Phillip, this might be one of the tracks that he's kind of started to catch on. 6 and a 3rd to me sounds like, Derek, that first time here he was like, oh, okay, what exactly are we dealing with this next gen car at the Nashville Super Speedway? 2023, it sounded like to me that he was like, okay, starting to figure this thing out a little bit. Now coming into 2024, the run that he's on right now, up 11 spots from where he started, I think it's going pretty well for him tonight.
Well, isn't it weird as well, Josh, to think 6th and 3rd? You're like, whoa, those are almost bad numbers for Agnell Phillip.
One of the only drivers that I would even call those bad numbers.
Right? Yeah, he's so used to seeing him this up front and dominating this. Whoa, he finished 6th? That was a bad day for Agnell Phillip. But you're right, he's obviously figured something out here and is doing well here. Kind of got himself up in the top 4 and running along with Maverick Davis behind him in 5th. Let's write it down here. It's currently Irons, Gas, Soraya, Phillip, Maverick Davis, your top 5. And then Burke, Larson, Cody Harris, Andrew Freenosh, and Kyle Trudell, your top 10 here at Nashville Super Speedway. Welcome in once again. My name is Derek Watson, here with Joshua Lee here at Nashville Super Speedway. Here, part of the the RealSimRacing Full Throttle Cup Series. I'm so used to saying RSR in chat that just sort of came out in the broadcast there, but we're working lap 36 now. Look at this, by the way. Agnell Phillip up 11 spots. Bradley Burke up 14. Even more impressive, Josh. So got some big gainers here on the track.
And overcast clouds also starting to hit the speedway here at the virtual Nashville Super Speedway. That will drop that track temperature. Not sure how long the overcast clouds are going to stick around. I just opened, so this is starting to get interesting. I just opened the new-ish wet weather tab in the iRacing UI. I took a quick gander, and I see overcast clouds, or it's mostly cloudy, for the next 45 minutes or so. Sim time running at 2x speed, so that's going to be about the next 30-ish minutes of real-world time. But then starting at about 4:30 sim time, it's about 3:45 right now sim time. Starting about 4:30 sim time, light fog. And oh, by the way, the wind speed is about 17 miles an hour, going to go up to 18 at its highest gusts. But light fog for Nashville in the summertime.
Yeah, I think we need to talk with Evan Pasoko about this. I don't know how you get fog in Nashville in the summertime. I don't know how you get that to happen there. But coming back to Bradley Burke, he must have figured something out, Josh, because when he and I talked pre-race, he said he wasn't really looking forward to this race. He didn't like the setup, didn't like how the car was driving. He said, in fact, it doesn't even suit my driving style. So I'm just going to have to deal with it tonight. Well, when your idea of quote unquote dealing with it is P6, I think you're dealing with it just fine. As part of the Get Wet Motorsports team here is running along here. And by the way, Agnew Phillip, by the way, has fallen back to 5th in that conversation. Maverick Davis made the pass for 4th, so maybe Agnew Phillip is sort of finding his ceiling here in this moment.
Last time by a 30.8 for Agnew Phillip, 30.773 for Maverick Davis. Of course, those tires also continuing to start to wear. And on the topic of weather, as somebody who has also spent the last 2 summers in Nashville at some point with Evan, I would have hoped for a nice hot day. I remember the race we went to. It was pretty hot until the rain started to come down about halfway through the race, and we got stuck at the speedway for a little bit, and we did wait out the rain, did see the rest of the race in 2022, but that involves myself, Evan, a good bit of our coworkers, and funny enough, Steve Soa, who is currently running P17 on the racetrack in the Montucky Gold Snacks number 75. He was with us on that faithful rainy day at the Nashville Super Speedway, and we did see a cup race. We did see Chase Elliott go to victory lane on that afternoon turned evening, but it was the one weekend that Monster Jam and NASCAR did line up almost perfectly at the Nashville Super Speedway. And we did also, on the topic of that weekend, did get to see driver of the Bakugan Dragonoid Monster Jam truck, Camden Murphy, go NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series racing behind the wheel of the number 30 Rowdy Energy Toyota Tundra that weekend on a Friday night. Unfortunately, didn't complete that entire race, did end up getting taken out, I believe, midway through stage 1, but still was a good truck race, so we got to see that Friday night as well.
By the way, speaking about you guys being in Nashville, everyone should tweet at Evan Pizzoco, because we were promised a story about watered down beer and hot dogs. And obviously, I think, Evan, I can't confirm this, Josh. I should not put my broadcast integrity on this, but I believe Evan Pizzoco has ditched us for Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. So there will be no wet beer story tonight on the broadcast. So if you guys want to hear that, you're going to have to tweet at Evan Pizzoco and ask him to explain to you why I don't know the story about wet beer. I was told I had to wait as well, so I'm a little miffed.
Now, it's not going to come exactly from the primary source, but I can give at least a secondary source, because we were both at this race together, and it was pretty much right as the rain started coming down, and we were both kind of hungry, so we had both independently, together, went into one of the concessions lines at the Nashville Super Speedway. And it was about this time that the rain really started to come down. It was also about this time that the structural difficulties of the Nashville Super Speedway grandstand started to come into play, because the rain started to seep through the cracks and it started to get dumped out. Of course, they did have weather channels to try and get it down from the seating areas, but there was basically one massive, I mean, it was almost like a shower just going right in front of this concession stand. And it was just water dumping right onto it. And we're like 3 people maybe left in line as we see Kyle Trudell try and make a pass on Brett Larson in the number 51 car for P8 that we're watching right now. The water's coming down right in front of where you have to order your hot dog and your Bud Light, pay for it, and go on your merry way. So I said, nah, I'm good. I'm not that hungry, not that thirsty. I'm going to go with the rest of our group in the drive. Evan did not. Evan stayed. Evan got his hot dog, and he got his Bud Light, and he came back to our group, I think the most soaked out of anybody in the group, because he sat in that water, and he got his beer, and he got his hot dog.
Well, it's Bud Light. It was watered down regardless. He didn't have to stand in the rain.
He did not. At all.
That Bud Light would have been watered down all by itself. But look at the battle here on track. Andrew Freenotch here battling with that 51. That 51 has been in many camera shots tonight, battling hard side by side and being involved in things here. But Andrew, bit of a wiggle there in the bottom of that track there, trying to battle here for P9 and 10 with Brett Larson going back and forth. And then behind him right there is Jason Landry. Remember, Brett, as we said, being this broadcast, is one of those drivers battling for the cut line, Josh. So he is trying everything he can to stay relevant and stay involved here and not fall too far back.
Farinas has been in that fight to try and get back to RSR victory lane this season. 2 second places, 3 third places. He's been close, but he hasn't been able to get it done. And for him at the Nashville Super Speedway in RSR competition, of course, all of the different racetracks that he has driven in Real Sim Racing competition, he has driven at the Nashville Super Speedway twice. The first 2 rounds that we have been to this racetrack, 2021 and 2022, it was a 7th and a 4th place for Andrew Farinas. So also not exactly great numbers for the former champion of this series as well. But as he runs P9 up only 2 spots from where he began, not great numbers for Farinas either, as Maverick Davis is in a fight now with Michael Araya for P3 on the racetrack, and they still have Brandon Gass reeled in P2.
And, you know, Maverick Davis really having a great run tonight and must have finally figured out some things, Josh, because recently he got a brand new racing setup here. Walk you through it. He got a brand new CSL direct drive wheel, brand new Fanatec V2 pedals, and some other stuff. He's been upgrading that rig, and he said the past couple weeks of RSR has been trying to experiment and trying to learn how to set that stuff up and how to feel comfortable. But if you're running P3 at Nashville, I think maybe you got to dial it in.
This is one of the tracks where I would not want to do anything new. I would want it to be everything the same, everything as I'm used to it, because this track just requires you. It is a driver's track. I mean, we talk about driver's tracks in terms of road course racing. I mean, you talk about some of the most famous road courses in the world. There's talk about Monaco being a driver's track and really is a race winner set on qualifying day. When you talk about ovals, I think almost immediately the Nashville Super Speedway as being a driver's track. It's not cookie cutter like Texas or Charlotte might be, or the old Texas or Charlotte might be. It really is a hybrid racetrack. You got to be good at the short tracks because it is a short track package that is taken with the cars to this racetrack, but you also have to be good at some of those high speed intermediate tracks to be able to get around here quickly, as Brett Larson makes a move on Jason Landry to try and stay within the top 10.
Well, and the reason this is a driver's track as well, which is kind of what you hinted at by saying Monaco, is this is passing is a commodity here. Right? You know, we're seeing some great racing and some great laps and some great lines, but you know, this isn't, as you said, a Charlotte. This isn't obviously a Daytona or a Talladega. This isn't, you know, anywhere else. There's not a whole lot of passing happening here. I mean, yeah, we've seen Agnew Phillip come through the field. You've seen Bradley Burke come up through the field, but lap by lap, the positions are pretty stagnant here. You're not seeing a whole lot of, you know, passing in the bottom lane, top lane. So when you get somewhere and you can get back in line, you need to do it fast here, because we've seen a couple drivers get stuck outside, almost like Bristol style, where you get stuck to the top lane and little choo-choo train will come around and suck you in here. But here's some side-by-side battles. That's Agnew Phillip here trying to stay ahead of Kyle Trudell, and that's Cody Harris back in P8 as well here. So there's a thrice 3-car line here. They're going to try to pass here. Now, I think Agnew Phillip may have burned up those tires, Josh, trying to get to where he is, because he seems to have really stalled out and put a parachute on that car. He's not falling back really too far position-wise, but all of a sudden he sort of hit like a glass ceiling and cannot get any further.
Phillip did end up losing a spot to Bradley Burke, and I believe he did lose a spot to Michael Araya at some point as well, because he was up pretty considerably, like we mentioned earlier, up 11 spots, and now has lost 2 of those. He is now only up 9. Those lap times have not fallen off a whole lot, I think, of what we were expecting, or at least I was expecting, Derek. Best lap times we mentioned earlier, around 30 seconds flat. We're looking at right now about 31 seconds, high 38s, low 31s that we're seeing right now. So not too terribly worn of those Goodyear Eagles, but I think we're going to see a lot of drivers, once they reach that post-halfway bonus number lap of lap 75, I think we are going to see that round of green flag stops if we do stay green to that point. Already starting to hear a couple of drivers hitting that clutch and kind of coasting their way into turns 1 and 3.
Yeah, what may not be dropping off are the lap times, Josh, but what may be actually falling off is the driver confidence in this setup, the driver confidence in their tires, the driver confidence in how they can handle that car. Look at Agnew Phillip, got way wide out of turn 4, and now it's going to be passed on the inside by Cody Harris. So while the lap times may only be a second apart, it feels and looks like the confidence in the drivers and that comfort inside that seat is drastically down from where we started about 60 laps ago.
You mentioned Agnew Phillip getting way up to the outside in turn 4. Take a look at one of the rare mistakes from the 94. He hit the wall, albeit slightly, but he did scrub it.
And said, "Hello, wall." That's number 2. See, this is not as fun. You're not Evan Basoko. I was ready for a country battle off with Evan Basoko. You're not as up on your country music. Hello, Wall is a very, very old country song.
I do have a couple of country songs in my playlist, along with maybe
Taylor Swift is not
genres. Nah, I'm not counting Taylor Swift as country at all.
Okay.
But what I'm counting a little bit of Florida Georgia Line. I think I'll run you through all the quote unquote country artists I've got in my playlist.
Florida Georgia Line is about as country as Eminem. It's just not.
Okay, that's a bit of a stretch.
No,
I'd say they count on the country spectrum. Who else do I have in here? I've got. Can you sort by genre on Spotify? This is an off-topic question.
I do not use Spotify. I could not tell you.
Are you an Apple Music person?
I'm 100% an Apple Music person. Yes.
Oh my goodness! What are we doing?
I've had an Apple device in my hands since a long time, at least 15 years. And when Apple Music works fine, why do I need Spotify?
You can't sort by genre on here at all, so it's going to be a bit tough to tell you all of the country music artists. But I can say my new country music songs added to my playlist tapped out, I believe, at about 2015. So you're not going to get many newer country songs added in. But what we do have now is pit stops. Michael Araya has brought the number 44 into the pit lane. He's also brought Bradley Burke with him. He's going to grab some fresh Goodyear Eagles. And that is the first batch of the leaders to come into the pit lane. Haven't seen anybody else try and touch it yet, as Brandon Gass and Maverick Davis are going to aid in putting the 2 that just came down into the pit lane a lap down. Laraya and Burke are going to come back onto the racetrack 15th and 16th respectively, now 1 down.
Well, and that's suspicious to me, Josh, because we're hearing more pitting calls, by the way. This isn't what's going to happen, but this is about 10, 11, 12 laps short from halfway. That means probably we're not looking at a one-stopper for most of these drivers. Here comes Maverick Davis in the back of that shot. This means that we're not seeing a one-stop race from a lot of these drivers. They're going to try and have to pit here, which I suspect means there'll be a splash and go right around lap 130 in this race.
Yeah, Derek, help me understand this one as well. Is this going to be a proper 2-stop strategy? You mentioned the splash and go at around 130. It just seems like if you can make it the extra 10 laps, which clearly on tires, yes. If they didn't try and do any sort of fuel saving, I would assume those fuel tanks are going to start to run empty about now. But it's 10 laps short of when you can make it properly in a one-stop strategy. Why are you pitting now?
Obviously, you don't have confidence in the tires or you don't have confidence in the gas, one of the two, and you just want to see if you can get in there early. The reason why you pit early like this, Josh, is because maybe you don't have confidence in your competitors getting on pit road safely or not bringing out, not wrecking into pit road, but for Laraya and the others to pit that early, they either don't have the tires or the gas to make it. Now, I'm suspecting it's more of a tire problem. They just must feel like that car was undrivable, and they want to have a stable, safe car so that they don't have to ask Jesus to take the wheel.
Number 3. I'll take it.
Actually, number 4. I threw Summer Nights in there earlier, but I knew that was over your head.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're getting up there in the numbers.
Yeah. But look at this beautiful side-by-side battle here. This is a great battle we got going on here. Now again, man, right there's Brett Larson again, this time with Jason Landry. Larson's doing a great job. You know, for someone, you talked about how that top lane doesn't always hold as well, doesn't always produce the speeds, but man, Brett Larson's out to prove you wrong. Many times you've seen Brett Larson on camera tonight, Josh. He has been up in that second lane with someone below him, so doing a great job there. Now it's falling back behind Landry. Now the laps are sticking here. Now we're getting closer and closer to halfway. You know, this may be a question, Josh, of what's more important to you, winning the race or winning the halfway points. It may be that Lariah and others have a more winning strategy for the race, but maybe other drivers are racing for those halfway points. Listen, Lariah doesn't need a halfway point. He's already in the playoffs. He can sit back here and be conservative and just race and have fun. But for Peter Irons, for Brandon Gass, for Kyle Trudell, you know, they need those halfway points. They're not guaranteed a playoff spot. So that may be the difference of what we're looking at here and all. But here's Peter Irons. Look at that, man. He has we were talking about other cars, and I have missed that Peter Irons has put a 6-second gap here on the field. Wasn't he just like side by side with Maverick Davis and others? Obviously, the pitting has helped with that.
Pitting has helped, and he has led every single lap since the drop of the green flag. It has also helped him to start pulling away. Nothing but clean air throughout the entire night. But this battle between Landry and Larson is now broken up, and it is a bit of a four-car battle that you can almost throw a blanket over. They're only separated by about 1 second on the racetrack. It's Farinage, it's Landry, Larson, and Cato in the number 12 that you can work your way back to. Tail end of this group as well by about 1.5 seconds is Agnell Phillip, who has dropped all the way to P9. An uncharacteristic. I think it's exactly what you mentioned, Derek. He reached the ceiling on those Goodyear tires and has fallen like a rock. Now has Maverick Davis behind him, who is now 1 lap down after he came into the pits as well, about 2 laps later than Burke and Lariah.
And look at that live demonstration right there. Look at that demonstration of how effective new tires are. And here comes another car down pit road, about 2 laps short. That's Kyle Trudell pitting out of the top 5, by the way. But look at that live demonstration that Maverick Davis just did for Agnell Phillip of how good tires are. Watch it again here. Now he's going to get here under the 51, and it just blows right by him. I mean, just wow. Like, when you see that as a driver, when you're the guy with old tires, that will frustrate you because you want those new tires, but maybe you have a number picked out in your head of when your lap is to pit, or, you know, if you're waiting for something to happen. Oh, here comes more cars down pit road. One almost got ran over there. But man, that is an impressive thing from Maverick Davis. That makes you feel like Superman in that moment.
Cam Patterson, Braden Whitaker, Brett Larson, Brandon Gass are all in. We can almost expect now to see Peter Irons try and stretch it all the way as we see the halfway lap now. End of this lap, those halfway bonus points will be given away to drivers within the top 10. And the edge of the top 10 is now in the pit lane. This is going to be an interesting end to this halfway bonus as Burke and Lariah will assume the 9th and 10th positions. Phillip is in. George is in at the halfway bonus. Irons is also in at the halfway bonus. He makes it onto the pit lane safely.
I'll see what that pit stall is. If that pit stall is before the line,
he's going to be too slow. Harris is still on the racetrack. At the line, Harris is going to go to the halfway bonus and is going to take the maximum halfway bonus points.
Well, let me tell you something. From what we just saw from all these pit stops right here, Josh, Irons was the last one on lap 75. Look at that. The ticker just went down. That means we're halfway. And that's interesting to me because not a lot of drivers made it halfway in the first run. I don't know how many drivers will make it halfway on the second run. Oh gosh, Cody Harris looks like he was using a wagon wheel there for a steering wheel with how hard that car was wiggling back and forth like a pirate ship, but got it wound up here, and I think he's safe. Let me see if I don't check for penalties here. It looks like he's good. Wow, that was scary for Cody Harris.
I hope you're keeping track of I was about to say, I hope you're keeping track of your references. Wheel. I caught the wagon wheel.
Okay.
I caught that one. But of the drivers that did a true cut the race in half. 77 lap stints for Harris and for Ross Cato. So those are the two drivers that cut it truly in half. They pitted immediately after the halfway point was reached. Now this is your battle for the race lead. It's Bradley Burke and it's Michael Lariah. All of the green flag stops have cycled their way through. These two at the front, plus Maverick Davis, are on two of the oldest tires on the racetrack. Eric Papanow and Steve Soa pitted out of rotation. They're on 36 and 22 lap old tires respectively. They're on an alternate strategy than most of these drivers up front, but I'd even consider Burke and Lariah now. 15 laps is a long time. They're also on an alternate strategy, along with Maverick Davis, who pitted 13 laps ago.
So right now, I think if you're Burke or Lariah, Josh, what you're hoping for is about 20 laps or so, or more than that a yellow comes out, right? So that you can kind of reset everything with the field. Everyone comes down pit road. You all take tires. You all take gas. And it resets, right? If a yellow were to come out right now, for example, I'm knock on wood that it doesn't, Burke and Lariah would save a little bit of gas under yellow, but the rest of the field just pitted. They're all not going to pit again, I don't think, unless they're that concerned about gas. So Burke and Lariah needs this to go green for a bit, and then they need a yellow so that everyone will pit with them, because I don't find a way in any universe that you can think of that they're going to go roughly 90 laps on gas and win this race. They're going to need some external help if they're going to be contenders here at the end of this race.
Definitely can't go 90 in the fuel tank. I also don't think they can go nowhere near 90 on tires as well. Although, a lot of those drivers that made it halfway did surprise me with their tire usage and with their saving of tires throughout that entire run. Because we did not see a whole lot of lap time downfall from especially those drivers that were running up front. Peter Irons comes to mind, along with a lot of the other drivers that were around him during that run. But of the drivers that pitted most recently, of course, that was Cato, and that was Cody Harris as well. Cato currently sits P14. Cody Harris sits a little bit better, P7. That difference coming, not exactly sure where. They came out of the pit lane around the same point. Harris actually spent more time in the pit lane, so that was just them coming down into the pit lane at different rates, even though they both did come down from first and from second place. That's just how all of the positions shake out, as Harris is going to put Brandon Gass down into P7, make it P8, as now he and Larson are going to go side by side.
Larson's going to barely clear himself here in front of Gas. So right now, you kind of got almost, two different races going on, Josh. We have our actual race leaders racing. That's Burke and Lariah. But we know that unless something happens, that's not really the race for the lead here. The race for the lead is really, I guess, Peter Irons in fourth, but he's not under any pressure. He's got a 6-second gap back to Kyle Trudell. So if there's anyone doing, I don't know, it's not a rain dance. I guess it's like a no caution dance. It's Peter Irons, because he has a 6-second gap here that I don't see. I mean, and I guess Kyle Trudell's not only a second back. Sometimes it's starting to normalize a little bit here, but I don't know. That's gonna be a big gap for anyone to make up here in this race. So I guess right now, to go for number 6 here, do you think Kyle Trudell is saying, "How do you like me now"?
I was going to bring up the honky tonk when you were talking about dancing in a country music sense. Do I get one at least? That. I'll take one.
Yeah, be proud of it.
All right. I'll take the one, as we do have a pseudo battle for the lead between Bradley Burke and Michael Lariah. Both on the same strategy, like we mentioned, pitting 22 laps ago as they work their way past looks to be the 30 of Mike Maddox, who had an incident, or not Mike Maddox. Maddox is still in the pit lane. That was the Andre Kane that they were working their way by. I mentioned Mike Maddox. He has been in the pit lane for a combined 26 minutes now, and also is 50 laps down. Not exactly sure what happened to him. I'll see if I can go all the way back and find that replay of whatever happened to Mike Maddox. But regardless, the battle for the lead is not really much of a battle. Burke and Lariah both are in the same boat not exactly battling, because it wouldn't do anything but hurt them. They're on a completely alternate strategy than the rest of the field. They will have to pit again, and if anybody's doing any kind of dancing, it's Peter Irons for no cautions, and I think it's Burke and Lariah for a caution. You can throw Maverick Davis into that group as well, only pitting 2 laps after this group in the 19 and the 44.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different strategies, a bunch of different wishes, a bunch of different things going on right now. I mean, there's no way they're going to save the gas they need, but I mean, Burke and Lariah could try backing up their times here and, you know, seeing if they maybe if they could tuck behind Maverick Davis and or let him catch up, at least slow down those times. I mean, if you're going to be out of gas, you can limit how much time you need on pit road. You don't need to have a 1.5 second gap to Davis. You don't need to have a 3-second gap to Peter Irons. Listen, whether you win this race by a second, 10 seconds, or a tenth of a second, you win the race. I would be backing up my laps here if I was one of these two guys. Yeah, you're not going to save all the gas you need to not pit, but what you're going for now is limiting how much time you do need on pit road when you inevitably have to come down here.
I did go back and try and see what happened to Mike Maddox to put him into the pit lane for 28 minutes now. Absolutely nothing happened to the 30 that we could see on the racetrack. No contact with the wall, no contact of any kind. He just pulled it into the pit lane and called it a race. So not sure exactly if anything happened on the racetrack to bring that in from the 30's point of view. But nonetheless, he is, for all intents and purposes, retired from this race. Only other battles than this one that we're taking a look at for the pseudo race lead is between Harris and Larson. And Larson catching a little bit Cody Harris on 3-lap fresher tires in terms of stint numbers. But Harris pitting the most recently grabbed the maximum amount of points for the halfway bonus and doesn't need to pit unless we get a yellow flag. The driver that he pitted with, Ross Cato, is having that same exact thing that happened at the beginning of the race for him. He got stuck on the outside, got freight trained by 2 cars on the inside.
Yeah, Ross, you see here, is trying now to get that momentum back up here and see what he can make happen. But you're right, there's a lot of different pit strategies to play here. If we could take a look at the last lap pitted graphic in a moment here, there's at least 2 or 3 different strategies going on here. So, I mean, Bradley Burke, Michael Lariah, obviously they need to pit. Maverick Davis is right there with them, basically. Then Peter Irons, you know, Kyle Trudell, Cody Harris, 77. I mean, so there's a couple drivers. I don't know if they're going to make it. They're going to be close. Obviously, Steve Selva's well off the strategy, but there'll be a lot of questions if we stay green here about what happens to this track, because I think as what's going to happen is as this day gets longer and as we get closer and closer to the nighttime, this track may get a little faster, Josh, and when tracks get faster, you typically burn more gas.
I mentioned opening up.
Sorry, we both try to step on each other, and I apologize for that. Speaking of which, the driver on screen there in that white and brown car, speaking of the track going faster, Cam Patterson back in P11, new fastest lap, by the way, 29.882. So if you need proof that the track is getting faster, he's now your fastest lap by more than 0.3 of a second over what Peter Irons did.
Great lap from Cam Patterson underneath 30 seconds. The only other drivers to do that tonight, Braden Whitaker put down a 29-second time. Minotzi Major did as well. And former race leader Peter Irons as well as Bradley Burke all putting in sub 30-second lap times. But I was going to mention I opened up that weather tab in the iRacing UI a little bit earlier to check in on the weather. Currently, a little bit of sun peeking through the mostly cloudy skies that the sim is reporting. Still reporting some relatively high winds north at about 16 miles per hour right now. But in about 15 minutes sim time, which is about double real life time, so in about 6.5 minutes, 7 minutes, so to speak, we're going to be looking at light fog reported here at the Nashville Superspeedway in virtual Lebanon, Tennessee. So we're going to see a little bit of changing conditions, and hopefully a little bit more of cloud cover and dipping in to, like you mentioned, Derek, the evening times, crossing over 4:45 in sim time. Don't think we're going to see darkness over the racetrack, but might see a little bit more cloud cover and, weirdly, fog cover.
Well, tell you what, Cam Patterson almost saw a car on his driver's side door right there is what he almost saw, but they got it all worked out, and the 56 is going to keep on moving here. And there's DeAndre Kane now going to try to make the pass on the bottom of Sam Nieto. There's Sam Nieto, by the way. That's a 2 car. So whatever connection problems he had earlier, he has worked out and is now back on track, multiple laps down. But still wants to get out here and try to run some laps, earn some points, and see what he can make happen here. And with 54 laps to go, listen, anything is still possible. Obviously, we've had a completely green race, a very, very wild difference from last week in New Hampshire. But you run the laps because you never know. Even a single spot or two could make the difference in points that Sam Nieto needs at the end of the season.
Nieto got back on the racetrack 4 laps down, has not gained any of those back just yet. DeAndre Kane, who we saw as well, running now behind that number 2, is 3 laps down. Other drivers that are laps down that are still on the racetrack, Manazzi Major, 1 lap down. Eric Papineau actually just went from 1 lap down to 2 laps down. Everybody else from 16th on up is currently on the lead lap as they stand. 52 laps remaining here from iRacing's virtual Nashville Super Speedway. It's all Bradley Burke in the number 19 who leads the way. 2 wins on the season for Burke in 2024. Looking to make it win number 3 after victories at Talladega and Las Vegas earlier on this year. And as that light fog starts to creep in, let's go through our entire field of drivers, shall we? As they currently stand on the racetrack, it's Bradley Burke who currently leads the way, Michael Araya in P2, Maverick Davis P3, Peter Irons in a battle with Maverick Davis currently for that 3rd spot, but he sits P4. Kyle Trudell is going to round out your top 5 on the racetrack with Cody Harris in 6th, Brett Larson 7th, Andrew Farinage 8th, Ross Cato in 9th, and Derek Jason Landry is going to round out the top 10.
And the big surprise, Agno Phillips back in P11 with Cam Patterson behind him in 12th. Then it's Brandon Gass, Thomas George, and Steve Soul round out your top 15. And then Braden Whitaker, Manazzi Major, Eric Papineau round out your top 18. And then, let's see, 19th and 20th is DeAndre Kane and Sam Nieto. And then Mike Maddox 21st. That's your look top to bottom at the field here with 50 laps to go.
21 drivers took the green flag tonight, and now 2 of them are in a battle for P3. That's Peter Irons to the inside of Maverick Davis. The number 1 machine led from the outset all the way through until lap 75 on the racetrack, and that's when he surrendered the lead to then Cody Harris. Now surrenders it to Bradley Burke, but 3 seconds back and gaining a bit of time. Peter Irons might be looking to regain that race lead under green. He's got 13 lap fresher tires than your top 2 and just ran 4/10 faster than Laraya and 2/10 faster than Bradley Burke in the race lead. Still 3 seconds to try and contend with for that lead, but closer back in the back of the field. This is the next closest battle you're going to see other than that battle that has finished between Irons and Davis for P3. This is for P7 on the racetrack between Larson and Farinage. You can go back a little bit further to find that gaggle of cars with Patterson, George, and Gass, but Farinage looks to the inside for 7th on the 51.
Well, and you know, if I was able to get to, as a crew chief or a spotter, to talk to Peter Irons right now, my comment would be simple: slow down. Right? You have what, 12, almost 11 seconds back to Kyle Trudell. Davis, Laraya, and Burke all need to pit. There's no way. I will be flabbergasted, gobsmacked, stunned, whatever word you can come up with.
Run amok.
You know, run a. I don't know if that's the right definition, but yeah, anything you can come up with to say if they make it to the end of this race, you know, without pitting. So if you're Peter Irons, slow down. You have nothing to race for here. Obviously racing for a win, but just, you know, make sure you have the gas left. Don't put yourself in a bad spot here. So just be patient. You don't need to pass them under green. They're going to pit. but right as that time gap is closing, I think he's going to pass him under green before they even get around here. The sun's going to come out a little bit again here. And we'll see if that affects how the track is. As we look at the track conditions, by the way, Josh, the track has dropped considerably. 10 degrees in track temp since we went green. So that's going to provide more speed in the track, more grip in the track. That'll provide more driver confidence about how you handle these corners and how you can kind of get in the gas sooner and make these corners work for you. But what it also means is the sooner you're getting into gas, the more gas you're using lap by lap.
Unfortunately, unlike yesterday's NASCAR Cup Series race in the real world and the iRacing world, we are not able to run these NASCAR Cup Series machines in the rain just yet. So no rain in the forecast. However, that humidity number there, top right of our track conditions box, 97%. Ugh. That's very, very accurate for a Nashville summer. I can tell from firsthand experience, and Evan can chime in our broadcast text chat as well. Nashville combined in the summer and outside, it's not an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, some of our viewers probably don't get to live in places like the Pacific Northwest or other areas where you don't have that humidity, and it's hard to explain it to someone who's never lived in it. But it's just like the moment you walk outside, it's like walking into this getting smacked in the face with hot air that's also wet at the same time. You can walk from like your front door to the mailbox and back and just be soaked in sweat because of humidity. So 97 is an awful number. That made me uncomfortable just thinking about it.
I think when me and Evan both landed in the UAE a couple of weeks ago, I checked my weather app at night when we landed from the airport and walked outside to grab an Uber. I think it was like 85% humidity, and it is immediate sweat. Like you walk outside and you're sweating immediately. That's not a choice. Yes. It's happening.
Yeah, it's similar to when I lived in Boston a few years ago. Just, the benefit to living somewhere like the Pacific Northwest, we get a little bit of humidity during the day, but it snaps at night. And it can still get pretty cool in the night, so you can kind of cool off your house and whatnot. Here's Maverick Davis, by the way, coming back to that topic in a minute. This is what we knew was going to happen. A little sooner than I thought, by the way, about 11 laps sooner than I thought he would. But the reason he pitched right now, Josh, is because if this means that it's almost worth it, quote unquote, to put tires on. If you pit with 20 or 30 to go, then the time gap you would get by putting the tires on is lost because of how few laps left there are. Now, that's a strategy. Whether you agree with it or not, I don't know. I probably would have... I don't know what I would do here. But yeah, here's Michael Araya pitting now, by the way. He just called it out, looking slow down there and down off of the track. Wow, there's Araya down. So that's all going to turn up again. Peter Irons back to the race lead.
Irons retakes the lead just like he did for the first half of this evening. So now those first couple of drivers make their way into the pit lane. Braden Whitaker is going to join them. Who's next in terms of laps run? I mean, Laraya's in, but everybody else is on the same strategy, only a couple of laps apart. Oldest tires is Kyle Trudell running P2.
Isn't my memory foggy? Laraya wasn't on and off strategy, was he? Laraya had pitted, I thought, with the big herd right around halfway. So to see Laraya down here already wanting new tires is curious to me. I thought he had already pitted
49 laps on the stint counter. I believe he was the driver that pitted with Bradley Burke.
Okay.
As well with Maverick Davis pitting 2 laps after them.
Okay. Yes, you're correct. Okay. That's what it is.
But nonetheless, Laraya now has made his bed. Same thing with the other 2 drivers I mentioned, Burke and Maverick Davis. They've made their bed. They have to lay in them no matter what. They're good to the end on fuel. Nobody else is. Pit stops from here are not a choice. They're a requirement for the rest of the field. And the only driver that has the highest number of laps on their tires is Trudell with 41 laps on their tires. Freshest is going to be Cody Harris, Ross Cato, Manatzi Major, all with 37.
I'm not convinced anybody's really... I mean, Cody Harris might be good, but those drivers who pitted 5 laps early, they may not be good. This may be a really big test of gas saving and what happens at the end of a race here. I'm not sure who's good and who's not. I mean, because if I were good on gas, I would have waited until 75 or 80 to pit to make sure the end of my race was safe, I would not have pitted right at the halfway marker. That tells me if they're pitting it halfway, they were pushing it as far as they could. So let's wait and see here. Now, this is Cody Harris going to try to make the pass here on the 7 machine and get down to the bottom here. This is Kyle Trudell. This will put Cody back in P2. But I'm going to have some question marks as this race goes on here about who is and isn't good on gas. I mean, I guess Peter Irons is good, because you would think if Peter Irons was concerned about gas, Josh, he would back up that 13-second gap.
Pitted 40 laps ago with 35 laps left. That leaves him at about 75 laps on a tank of fuel. That is possible, especially if he has been saving a little bit. Harris is in one of the safest spots. Same with Ross Cato. Both of them pitted immediately after halfway, so we know if they can make it to halfway, then they can make it to the end of the race as well. What really throws a wrench into all of this, Derek, is the potential at RSR overtime. There's 3 overtime attempts that we have available to us should we need them. Now, we haven't seen a yellow flag yet tonight, knock on wood, but if we see one and we need to end up in overtime rather than before the end of the race getting that yellow flag, some drivers might be a little bit wary about bringing it down into the pit lane. We might start to see some alternate strategies be used in an overtime sense, and might be seeing some drivers run out of fuel at the end of this one.
Yeah, if that overtime finish comes into play, that will be the ultimate question mark, because you said no one is good for the overtime. There's no way you'll convince me anyone has enough gas for even one overtime. So everyone will come down, and I suspect that they're coming down. You're gonna want 4 tires, but sometimes what you want and what you convince yourself to do as a driver are 2 different things, because you may want 4 tires, but you also may want the lead with how hard it is to pass here, and those 2 things may not go hand in hand as far as the decision making on pit road. So lots of different strategies here. 32 to go. Live here on RaceSpotTV. Myself, Derek Watson, and Josh Willie here for the RealSimRacing Full Throttle Cup Series. Right now it's Peter Irons up front, and you're seeing a battle here on track here. And that 12 seems to be content where he is. That's Jason Landry and Ross Cato. Ross Cato, by the way, Josh, next season, I believe, will finally hit his 300 start in RSR.
Cato, one of those very familiar names that all these drivers run with on a Monday night, and what really is what keeps bringing these drivers back to the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series. It is the familiarity. They know they get to race with some of the best in iRacing. That includes Cato. That includes Agnel Phillip, who is currently working his way through the Road to Pro ladder, trying to be in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Of course, a lot of drivers that have made their way through RSR have also made their way through the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. And as Phillip goes on the road to try and be racing on Tuesday nights with iRacing's best, of course, still running on a Monday night here with us. And unfortunately for him tonight, Derek, this is a relatively uncharacteristic territory for Agnel Phillip, running P9 on the racetrack as Kyle Trudell pits from the top of the racetrack.
Yep, Trudell is now going to come down pit road here. We knew that was coming as well, so not a big surprise. So there's one more spot for Agnel Phillip, but you're right, sort of just a mid-pack run here. But listen, anything can still happen here with 29 to go, and we'll see how Agnel Phillip can handle his tracks all the way out to the wall. Beautiful job there. Gets it up here, keeps it basically against the wall. Now we get it back down here for 3 and 4. And I thought I heard some lifting there, Josh.
That was a lot of lifting and coasting and a lot of clutch as well. Let's listen again through turns 1 and 2. And I think what stuck out to me, Derek, listen to how long he is out of the throttle. That's almost mid-corner that he's getting back on the gas. That is a lot of aggressive fuel saving.
So let's do this if we can. Let's go up to Peter Irons, and let's do the same thing. I'm curious to know what Peter Irons is doing. Let's crank up the volume on his engine here if we can, and let's find out.
A lot less.
That's a lot less. That makes me curious. Peter Irons obviously has some kind of a strategy in mind for gas that Agnel Phillips does not, because that is a very drastically different strategy in play.
Clutch.
Yeah.
We saw
The
Peter
only-
Irons pit before halfway. Was he doing the same fuel-saving measures? If he was, well, by fuel-saving measures, I mean almost no fuel-saving measures. But if he was doing the same thing in the first half, he was only one lap short of halfway. So it's not like it didn't work in the first stint. Will it work in this one?
It might. I mean, it very well might. That's why we run the races, right? Because it's the excitement of finding out how things work out and what's going to happen and who can make it work and who can't make it work. But I would think there should only be a couple of drivers on the track who are running almost, quote unquote, full throttle. Pardon the naming here, which would be like Lariah and Burke, Kyle Trudell, the people who just pitted a few laps ago. But I am stunned that with a 13-12 second lead, that Peter Irons is still full throttle here. He must be confident in that gas tank.
So Irons leads. Cody Harris catching at a slow rate of speed, but still catching all things considered. He runs currently in second place, 12.5 seconds back from Irons, who leads the way. Harris with a really, really solid night as well. Solid qualifying effort as well. Qualified in 5th. Didn't really talk about it much in the opening stint, Derek, until he led at the halfway bonus, got all 10 maximum bonus points that were available to him. But then what he also did was pit past halfway. Only one of 2 drivers to formally pit past the halfway point. So we know if he does the exact same thing as he did in the opening stint, there's only 2 drivers that we know for sure can make it to the end of this race, and that is Cody Harris and Manatzi Major, also in that group, but also Ross Cato.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't think so. The only question mark I want to put out there, and I agree with you, he can make. But as this track is getting colder and faster, it could be that just because you made it to halfway the first time doesn't always mean you're going to make it to halfway the second time, just because, the track's faster, you're burning more gas. But I agree, Cody Harris is good. It's the drivers who pitted right before halfway that I have some question marks about, but we'll wait and see how this plays out. Here is Bradley Burke, by the way. He's running P9. And right now is back on the lead lap, we should say. Both him and Lariah have passed the leader. So whatever passes they can make from here for the next 21 laps or so will be for position. And man, at least Burke here is doing a great job. Look at those laps he's turning. Look at the speed he has, the control he has. Really just kind of making it look simple. Now he's going to come up on Agnell Phillip here. And this will be a pass for position when he gets there.
We can check out a comparison of those last 3 laps. So compare the 19 to the 1 leading the way. And this is with those fresh tires. Look at how much slower Irons is. Over 8/10 on 2 of those laps.
And say what, that's going to be interesting because Burke right now is 22 seconds back with 20 laps to go and gaining almost 3/4 of a second a lap. He's not going to get there necessarily, but he's going to make it darn close. He's going to make it closer than I think he was if this stays green. He'll be within probably, 5 seconds the leader when this, when this ends, if everything stays status quo. Now, if Irons needs to start backing up for gas or if something crazy happens, and listen, here's the thought. If that little magical yellow flag comes out right now, if you're Bradley Burke, you'd have to put real thought into staying out because you have the tires, you have the gas. You don't need to come down pit road. You could take the lead just by staying out.
What do you think that magic number is for Burke? If a yellow flag were to come out, he's at 21 laps worn on his tires, 18 to go, soon to be 17 to go. What's that magic number? If the yellow flag comes out at an X amount, is it right now that once after this lap, Burke?
I think it's anytime. It's anytime because right now, the tires can be a little older, but as we've talked about tonight, Josh, passing is a commodity here. Passing is like trading gold. We're not seeing a whole lot of it unless tires are at play. But if you're in overtime, you need to worry about 2 laps. You're not worried about a 10-lap run. You're not worried about a 12-lap run. You're worried about 2 laps. I would think about it, or maybe I would think about 2 tires, 2 right-side tires and putting myself in the lead. But I would not do 4 tires if I was Bradley Burke or if I was Michael Lariah. 2 tires at most, because they have the gas. They don't need to stop for gas. they should be able to make it, I would think, all 3 overtimes without pitting.
With the overtime talk, it is 16 to go. It'll be 15 to go once Peter Irons comes across the start-finish line. I mentioned the foggy conditions that were working their way into the Nashville Superspeedway. You can tell by our action cameras that some fog has definitely set in on a summer evening at the Nashville Superspeedway. But take a look at our overhead shot as well. Visibility is starting to get relatively low. I would hate to be a iRacing in-game spotter trying to spot from up top the spotter stand, because you'd have to really get the binoculars out.
I have to get something out. Binoculars, a helicopter fan, or I don't know what you got to get up there to get that fog to move, but something. Yeah, that'd be a tough spotter gig up there from those stands. That'd be for sure here. But here we go. Back to Bradley Burke here, making another pass and getting it on here. 15-14 now to go. As Peter Irons leading it around here. And what's interesting to me, by the way, if you look at it here on the board, the difference between Burke and Lariah, by the way, Burke is a P6, Lariah is P10. There is about, 5 or 6 seconds between them. So even though they were saying pit strategy, Burke obviously is playing it better than Lariah did.
Lariah, a good bit behind, like you just mentioned, but Agnell Phillip, another one of those drivers that is on the potential one-stop strategy with 13 to go, looking a little bit better for the 94, but 9th place. I think this is going to stand to be either one of his worst or his worst finish of the 2024 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series season. All of the points-paying races, he did have 2 17th place finishes, one at Talladega, one at Charlotte, and then a 16th place at Iowa. But with no major problems on the racetrack, he hasn't hit the wall. He scrubbed the wall a little bit coming out of turn 4 a little bit earlier, but no major incidents, no major hang-ups, just a very, very off day for the 94.
Yeah, very off day indeed here. I would agree with that here. I agree with that. Just very, different not to see him up front. And now he's in the battle. Michael Lariah, as he clears himself almost across Lariah's nose here. And now they're going to come down into this corner together and try to get inside Cam Patterson. Patterson is going to close the door and say no thank you. And now Lariah up top on Agnell Phillip.
Lariah upstairs, Phillip downstairs is Peter Irons in the number 1, works his way off of turn 4 as the fog really starts to set its way in the Nashville Superspeedway. We take 10 laps to go. We have gone caution-free since we dropped the green flag. Will we go caution-free for the remaining 10 laps of this race? You're tuning into a battle for P4. It's Jason Landry, Ross Cato, and Bradley Burke. 3 cars dive into turn number 1 as Burke on the fresher tires, 34-lap fresher tires to be specific, pushes Cato up the road, give Burke 5th place. He's looking to grab 4th on Jason Landry into turn 3.
And a great battle there. I wasn't sure. I know 3 cars entered that turn, Josh. I wasn't quite convinced all 3 cars were going to exit that turn there for just a moment, but they barely got it worked out, and everyone's going to come home safe here. And by the way, not of much note, but I will say Peter Irons has dropped about 2 seconds on that lead to Cody Harris. So whether Irons is now fuel saving or Harris is getting faster, that may be up for debate. But that gap is closed, not enough to really be of significance, I don't think, here. And, nothing that's going to, quote-unquote, cost him the race as of this moment. But that small gap here, I don't know if maybe Irons is finally backing it up here, but let's see. Now, here's Maverick Davis, and here's Agnell Phillip, by the way. 2 of the bigger names that are commonly up top in RSR, back here battling for P9, P10, and doing a pretty good job of it.
I don't want to rib on Agnell Phillip too much. Every driver has their off days, and honestly, this is just proving that Agnell Phillip is human with his 2 championships. But from where he started back in P15, he's now running P10 as Maverick Davis works his way past for P9. still up 5 spots from where he began. So it's still a net positive on the day for the number 94. I don't want that to be washed over on everybody. 7 wins on the season. He is fine for the playoffs. He has almost nothing to worry about. Just an uncharacteristically down day for the 94. This is side by side for P3, the final spot on the podium. Again, 35 lap fresher tires in this instance for Bradley Burke on Andrew Farinaj. He makes quick work of the number 19 to work his way up into that spot. And Brett Larson just went from P8 down to P10. Davis and Phillip go on by.
Well, and wrap up the Agnew Phillip conversation by saying this one simple thing, Josh. Luckily for him, that Nashville is a one-visit track. This is not, a Bristol or a Dover or a Talladega or somewhere where we're going to come back again. So, hey, listen, it's a bad day. You're locked in the playoffs. You have your 7 wins. Just enjoy the ride. And, we're not coming back till next year. So, that's the good news for him as far as that's concerned. But here we are, 5 laps to go. That gap is still closing, by the way. Peter Irons must be backing up some because now he's down to less than 10 seconds from Cody Harris here. Look at this here. Irons has now got a little bit of draft ahead of and behind to help him with that gas. And whether he needs it or not, that's going to help there. But look at that. Cody Harris, not enough of a gain there. I mean, 0.2 of a second, then less than 1/10 of a second. So not enough to matter here. But Irons seems to be parked comfortably in that draft. So maybe he all of a sudden figured out that gas was something he needed to worry about.
3 seconds now, or 0.3 that last time by. 3 to go now as Irons crosses the line, 30.8. So that was a faster lap time there for the number 1. As Harris, you can see right now, crosses the start-finish line. That is how long 9.2 seconds is here in Nashville. And he did not gain nearly as much as he needed to that last time by. He will need a yellow flag, only going to have about a lap and a half to get that yellow flag, as Peter Irons is going to take 2 laps to go. And Peter Irons looking for his first race win of the season.
Well, here we go. All those question marks we had earlier about who could and couldn't make it, if anyone pitted too soon or whatever it is, they're going to get answered in about the next 30 to 60 seconds right here, Josh. If anyone's not going to make it, it's going to happen right now. Here we go for the penultimate time in 3 and 4 for your leader.
Made his first start at Sonoma and has raced every week with us since at Iowa and New Hampshire. It's white flag out for the number 1 Peter Irons. This race is official and caution free from the drop of the green flag through turns 1 and 2 and 8.8 seconds to boot. It is double 5th places and 1 4th place finish. Nothing but top 5s for the 1 Peter Irons. And as he rounds his way through turns 3 and 4, safely on the outside of the racetrack in start number 4, he is gonna go to victory lane. Peter Irons, take a bow. You are a Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series winner.
Oh, there it is, Josh. Pure domination. Led almost every lap. Had a few laps not led, but the same as they're walking in Memphis, Peter Irons walked away with the victory here at Nashville.
Vantage Racing Team sits on top. What a night for Peter Irons. Led the most amount of laps and made it work at the end of this race. Harris and Burke round out the podium. Both Irons and Harris on very similar strategies. How about the 2-stop strategy from Bradley Burke and Michael Laraya? They both ended up Bradley Burke in 3rd, Laraya in 7th. But the 1-stop strategy proved the best as Peter Irons is burning it down on the front straightaway.
There it is. So obviously, that's the answer right now. And I don't know if you're Bradley Burke, maybe a question if the tires was the right call or not. I don't know. But regardless, a P3 is a great job. Cody Harris, P2. But P1 right here as he gets a little hello from his teammate. That's Peter Irons. And I'll tell you what, if iron does sharpen iron, I wonder how great he'll be in a couple weeks when we come back from our break.
Irons celebrates with his teammate on the front straightaway, and we take a look at your full finishing results for the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series from the virtual Nashville Superspeedway. It's Irons who grabs the win, and all Chevy podium with Harris and Burke rounding out your top 3 spots. We'll talk to them in the post-race show coming up in just a moment. Andrew Freenarge and Jason Landry gonna round out your top 5 with Ross Cato, Michael Araya, Maverick Davis, Agnell Phillip, and Brett Larson rounding out the top 10. Kyle Trudell, Thomas George, Brandon Gass, Cam Patterson, and Steve Soa going to round out the top 15 as we go further into the drivers who are multiple laps down. Braden Whitaker, Manatsi Major, Eric Papanow, Sam Nieto, and DeAndre Kane rounding out your top 20. And rounding out the drivers that took the green flag was Mike Maddox, who had some issues with his handling in his race car. He pulled it down and retired in the pit lane. Dalton Randolph and Grant Davis both did not take the green flag, so they finish over the scheduled distance of laps down tonight. But as we wait for our podium finishers, Derek, caution free all the way to the end once again tonight, but it was an interesting race in terms of strategy, and the alternate strategies paid off. Bradley Burke, we're going to talk to him in the post-race show. He finished 3rd on a 2-stop strategy up against a bunch of other 1-stoppers.
Yeah, it's a great run here, and a lot of great fun was had tonight at this track. Caution free, so everyone got to make a strategy, and I love that, man. I'm a spreadsheet nerd. I love the what-if questions. I love the ideas of how we get there. So this is the ultimate form of racing, the ultimate form of mental chess, and Peter Irons is your grandmaster.
Irons takes the win from iRacing's virtual Nashville Superspeedway, and I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's get to talking with your now first-time race winner in Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series competition, Peter Irons. Peter, welcome to RSR Victory Lane. How good does this one feel?
Well, it's a fun place to be, for sure. And this is a fun track. You know, this is the one I had circled, so definitely glad to come out here and execute and enjoy the special list of guys who've been to Victory Lane in this league.
And execute you did. It was the one-stop strategy, and you pitted right before the halfway mark. How was your fuel when you pitted in that first stint, and how was your fuel when you came across the start-finish line as well at the end of that one? Were you running on fumes, or do you have a little bit more left in the tank?
So in the first stint, the goal was to make it to halfway points, because it doesn't matter a lot when you're coming in late trying to make the top 25 for playoffs. So I pitted right on the halfway mark. That's as far as I could go. I couldn't go any longer. I was worried I was running out of fuel going to my pit box. I think I was on 0.2 when I got to my pit box. And the last run, I thought it was really good because I had more fuel than laps that were left. But as I started running hard, the fuel kept going away and away. And before I knew it, I had less fuel than I needed to finish the race. So I started to have to save for the last 50 laps or so. But I had enough fuel to do a burnout, so I made sure I saved enough for that burnout.
Glad you saved enough to be able to burn it down in a celebration, but we put Nashville behind us, still got a lot of racing left. And in terms for you in playoff eligibility, of course, the minimum amount of starts rule that was around in RSR for a while is now gone. It is all points based, top 25 in the points. You were 27th coming into tonight, but you walk away with a win. That's got to help you in terms of the points. Is playoffs now a main focus, especially if you are above that top 25 threshold after this win?
For me, it's just, I'm not focused on the playoffs or earning points. If I just run well, then I will earn the points as I go on. I just want to learn racing with these folks because some of these guys are really talented. So the more I can learn from them, the better I'll be in points just from being able to learn and do better. And the better I'll do in the playoffs when that time comes.
Well, congratulations on your race win tonight, Peter. I know you got some people to thank, and get on your soapbox. Thank all the people that make it happen for you.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Without any broadcast, this wouldn't be as fun as it is.
Well, thank you very much, and congratulations on your race win as well. That is Peter Irons, who walks away with your victory here tonight from iRacing's virtual Nashville Superspeedway. And coming up, second fiddle was Cody Harris after getting the maximum amount of points in the halfway bonus. Derek, you're standing by with him now.
OH.
IO.
There it is, buddy. P2 tonight at Nashville. A fellow Ohio native, Cody Harris. Cody, well, P2 seemed to be the best you could do tonight. You led right at halfway. You pitted after halfway. But what happened? Why were you not able to catch back up?
I think I lost too much ground in the first run, but I just don't quite know what Peter was doing. I only had half a lap of fuel at the end because I ran the second run much harder. So I don't know what he was doing to save so much fuel because he pitted 2 laps before me, and then, I was catching him at the end, but there was just too much of a gap anyway. But yeah, kudos to him. I don't know how he did that. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think when you watch the replay later, you'll find out he had a little bit of drafting help from lap cars at the end that probably got him there. But yeah, impressive run by Peter. So, well, P2 tonight, this is sort of a rebound from the past couple weeks where you've had some tough times at New Hampshire and tracks before that. This must feel good, right?
Yeah, I just want to get another win here soon. I feel like I'm close. I usually have pretty good speed. I mean, Agnell's always tough to beat. Peter's pretty quick. Drew's pretty quick too. So a lot of good guys here, but yeah, I just need to keep putting races together like this and execute well.
So we're going to get a week off here for the holiday week, and we're going to come back at Pocono and Indianapolis back to back. Of those two, which is more likely for you to get a win at?
Have to be Indianapolis because I'm not sure I'll be at Pocono, but we'll see.
Well, there you go. All right. Well, listen. Well, great run tonight. Obviously, you're doing well in the season. You've got your wins, so you're locked into the playoffs. But we'll see you in a couple weeks here after the holiday break.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you. See ya.
And that's Cody Harris, driver 28, finishing P2 at Nashville.
It looks like not going to get a Bradley Burke with us to talk post-race, and we'll give him a moment if he shows his way into our broadcast waiting room. But Bradley Burke, one of those drivers, Derek, that was on the 2-stop strategy. Only a handful of drivers to try that out tonight. Everybody else pitting pretty much right at halfway. That was the only time they hit pit road tonight. Burke hit pit road twice, used the fresh tires to his advantage, and worked out well. Got himself a P3 finish, and it looks like we are going to get to talk to Bradley Burke, and you're standing by with him now.
There you go. I messaged him and he appears. Bradley Burke. What a great run tonight in the 19 Get Wet Motorsports machine. So let's just talk about it. The two-stop strategy. What was in your head when you pitted right around lap 65?
Honestly, I felt pretty good because I had started to pull away on the old tires and create a bigger gap than I was even anticipating. And the way that the tires were wearing towards the end of the run, I thought for sure when I pitted, I gave myself enough time to use them while they were good and be able to make passes. But it was very strange. Once we got about 10 or 15 laps to go, I was still running about 7 or 8 tenths faster, but I just kind of stalled out in the middle of the field.
So when you pitted on lap 65, it was more about the tires and less about the gas. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I was short on gas, but the main focus that me and Michael were kind of going through is being able to make a charge there at the end and not have to save anything and just use the tires because we felt pretty good on that long run before we pit.
So you had an incredible run at the end. You made your way all the way back into P3. You surprised me. I wasn't sure that taking the tires on lap 125, I think it was going to be the right call, but you made it work. But I have to ask in retrospect, do you think that taking that extra time to take the tires, if you hadn't taken them, could you have finished better? Or do you think the tires was necessary to finish where you did tonight?
It's hard to say. I honestly think it could have went either way, and it was actually very hard to pass unless somebody was willing to, cut you a break. So I think just going through traffic and all that stuff, it's kind of hard to say how it would have turned out.
All right, well, we're going to get the holiday break, and we're going to come back for Pocono and Indianapolis. What is your familiarity or comfort with those tracks?
They're actually two of my favorites. I feel like I'm pretty good at flat tracks, and so I'm actually looking forward to that, especially trying the next gen at the Indy Oval.
All right, yeah, that'd be fun. Our first time there, so we'll see how it goes. Well, listen, great job all the way back to P3 tonight, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for the broadcast.
Yeah, thank you. That's Bradley Burke, driver of the 19, finishing P3. Well, Josh, what an amazing night. So much fun here. You can even say that maybe Peter Irons did the boot scooting boogie and just pulled away with this victory.
Had a pretty dominating victory, all things considered, when he was out in front. But coming up next week, not going to have anything in terms of RSR here on a Monday night on RaceSpotTV. But in 2 weeks' time, we're going to go racing from the virtual Pocono Raceway, which... does it have 4 corners? Does it have 3? Does it have 6? I've heard 5 be an argument. 5 is your argument. So either way,
yes.
We're going to go racing at Pocono. High speed, completely different corners on all 3 ends of the racetrack. It's going to be an interesting one when these drivers go racing at Pocono, and then another high-speed speedway of Indianapolis with the return of the Oval and the next week.
Yeah, that'll be a big question mark, how these cars handle it and what they can do with it. So we'll see there. But I've had a blast tonight, Josh. I look forward to working with you when you're back from all your traveling around the world. But maybe Evan Basoka will grace me with his presence in 2 weeks' time.
I know on this international excursion, Evan will not be joining me. So it is a little bit more of a good luck that you might have Evan Basoko in the booth back again for the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series. But that'll do it for tonight's coverage on RaceSpotTV. For everybody at the RealSimRacing Cup Series, and for my colleague Derek Watson in the booth tonight, my name is Joshua Lee. We thank you for tuning in to RaceSpotTV's coverage of the RealSimRacing Cup Series, and congratulations to Peter Irons, who walks away with your race victory. We're back in 2 weeks' time on July the 8th from virtual Pocono Raceway, and every Monday night you can catch the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series on RaceSpotTV. Until next time, we're saying good night from iRacing's virtual Nashville Superspeedway.